Hello, I'm Janice Karen, Director of Policy, Technology, and Innovation at the Massachusetts Health Data Consortium, or MHDC. I run our Data Governance Collaborative, also known as the DGC. We start each of our weekly meetings with a series of industry quick updates to learn about new and proposed regulations, laws, standards, industry initiatives, and other activity. Join us for this week's updates. All right, so if you'll go back a slide, we skipped one.
Oh, why is that doing that? Okay, sorry.
So there's a new bipartisan legislation that has been proposed. It's called the No Surprises Act Enforcement Act. It is designed to force faster implementation of the No Surprises Act and also hopefully head off some of the copious amounts of litigation that have been going on against the No Surprises Act, particularly against the dispute resolution process. For some reason, the text of the bill is not available on Congress.gov, but there's a press release that's linked below, and excuse me, it basically tries to improve enforcement by increasing the penalties for noncompliance, provides parity between penalties imposed against parties who are noncompliant, and increases the transparency and reporting requirements. Now, I will note that I haven't read the bill, so maybe that's covered there as well. But a lot of the slowness in getting implementation is actually the fact that it's taking a really long time to get regulation around the No Surprises Act. And in fact, large portions of the bill were basically said implement the best you can without regulation, but some of the key surprise billing components which are being really strictly and formally regulated, as well as the dispute resolution process, is a lot of the surprise billing pieces don't have regulation yet. So if this bill doesn't include some type of timelines around requirements for when those things, when the related regulations are imposed, and perhaps or enforcement deadlines for regulation, or both, then I'm not sure how much this will help, except maybe a little bit around the margins. So I don't know if anyone has any comment or thought or questions about that. I realize I don't know very much about it yet, but it's something to watch. All right, let's go on to the next update then. Excuse me. CMS has released new guidance on the second round of drug price negotiations. That includes the process they're going to use for this second cycle, but more importantly, how they're going to ensure patients can access drugs at the negotiated prices. And that includes specific requirements on both the drug manufacturers, the payers, and pharmacies and other entities that dispense drugs. So you can take a look at the guidance at the link, as well as a fact sheet about the guidance. And the idea is that they incorporated both lessons learned from the first go around and public comments on some draft guidance. And then the other thing that they have in the guidance is public outreach to help ensure that patients know they're supposed to get these prices, which is part of the efforts for ensuring that they get them. Any questions or thoughts or comments there? All right, let's keep going then. So it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and CISA has put out a toolkit designed to help organizations educate employees and customers on good cybersecurity practices. It is a pretty expansive toolkit. In addition to a guide, it has all kinds of graphics and sample social media posts, backgrounds that you can use, other types of branding, infographics, presentations. Excuse me. Tip sheets, puzzles, and printable posters. So it's really designed to be very engaging with the public or people who maybe aren't as technical, and kind of be fun to engage, whatever that actually means. So you can find all of those resources at the link if you're interested, and definitely check them out. All right, let's keep going. So this one is really interesting. This is a new term for me. HC3, which is one of the HHS cybersecurity organizations, put out an analyst note on what they're calling malvertising, which is the combination of malware and advertising. So malvertising is basically the inclusion of malicious advertisements into otherwise benign advertising feeds, or they've also put in with it something they're calling search engine optimization poisoning, which is manipulating search engine results to lead folks to go to harmful websites. And so this particular note talks about what malvertising is, how it can be used, the different types of malvertising attacks. But it also points out that healthcare entities are really susceptible to this because of all of the digital technology they tend to be using and the fact that they've invited ads into so many of those arenas. So in addition to being a way in for ransomware and spyware, it can also include adware, which is displaying unwanted advertisements. And often with adware, there's also tracking involved, which is a component of spyware. They can also include Trojans, which allow people unauthorized access to the device, or cryptojacking, which is a newer one, which is mining cryptocurrency without permission. So those are some of the types of attacks that malvertising has been used to initiate. Any questions so far before we go on to the second page? All right, let's keep going. So they point out a few common types of malvertising attacks. Something called a drive-by download, which is where the ad automatically installs malware without the user knowing about it. There's also a click-based exploit, which is a more traditional thing that you might think about with advertising, which is when you click on an ad, you go to someplace that is malicious. There's also click fraud, which generates fraudulent clicks on ads to generate revenue for the person who's doing the advertising. And then phishing ads, which again are ads that when you click on them, they go to places that are designed to get you to enter information and for them to steal it. So the potential mitigations are pretty normal. I mean, they're basically mostly the same things you would do for any type of cybersecurity. I mean, there's ad network security for those who run ad networks. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. If you're running any type of server that's serving up content, you want there to be proper security for that. User awareness, educating users not to click on unknown ads. Well, now that's obviously an interesting one because the people who are doing the advertising might say, well, the whole point of the ad is to get the user to click on something they don't know about. And that's also true in many cases. So that's kind of a competing priorities there. And I'm not sure how that one's going to work. But obviously, raising awareness that it's possible that clicking on an ad could have unintentional bad consequences for you is certainly a good note. Network segmentation is always a good idea so that if malware gets in, it doesn't have very far to go. Keeping your software, including your browsers, up to date and using good security features, and then obviously having proper incident response planning. So you can find the full note at the link there. It's it goes into more detail about each of these items, covers a few other things. It was really interesting. If you're interested in cybersecurity, it's actually a really interesting read. Anyone have any comments or thoughts or questions there? All right, let's keep going. So the OMB has published some rules for federal government acquisition of AI, and there's a lot of stuff in their document. It's a pretty lengthy, pretty dense document. I did not read every word of it. I will tell you, I did skim it and look at sections that caught my eye. So there's a lot of different rules that you have to consider. A couple of them I thought were unfair because they're kind of like, you must ensure that you comply with civil rights laws to avoid bias. But that was literally a note that you have to address the risk that AI might generate unlawful bias, unlawful discrimination, or harmful outcomes, and basically avoid that, and require vendors to identify potential biases and how they're trying to mitigate them. So it was kind of like you must not have bias in your AI without any real way of telling people how to avoid it. And similarly, there was some of that around like the IP rights comments as well. Although there were certain things that they did there which were obvious things there, like are not allowed to have any federal agency data used for model training or training generative AI. That's generally a good rule for any organization, to be honest with you. And some approval requirements. So it was an interesting look, but like I said, I think it was kind of maybe a decent first pass, but there were places where it definitely kind of left the onus on the person trying to implement on how to actually do what they were saying you had to do, which I'm not a big fan of. Anyone want to comment or have any thoughts on that? All right, let's keep going then. All right, 1 second. I hope you learned a lot from our quick updates. If you're interested in finding out more about the DGC and its other activities, email me at dgc@myhealthdata.org. That email address is also on your screen.